When you think back to the Canada you grew up in, the first thing that returns isn't a place, it's a feeling. That quiet moment when you stepped inside after a cold Saturday morning on the ice rink, loosening your scarf as heat from the car vents thawed your fingertips. Maybe you remember your dad brushing a thin layer of snow off your shoulders before you climbed into the back seat. Maybe you remember your mom turning around with that familiar smile asking, "Okay, where should we go for dinner today?" It sounded like a simple question, but somehow it felt like the beginning of a tiny adventure. For so many families across Canada, from Windsor to Winnipeg, from Halifax to North Vancouver, weekends had a rhythm. A stop at Zeller's in London, a quick walk through Sherway Gardens, a snowy parking lot dash in Saskatoon, the glow of Pacific Centre on a rainy Vancouver afternoon. And somewhere between those errands and the fading winter daylight, your family always ended up deciding on one of those unforgettable restaurants. The ones you didn't just eat at, the ones you grew up with, the warm booths, the friendly clatter, the comforting hum of families talking over plates that felt like home before you even took a bite. It's funny how, back then, dinner out wasn't just dinner. It was a break from the world, a little pocket of togetherness. You remember the way your coat steamed when you hung it on the chair, the way your shoes squeaked against the floor tiles after stepping through slush, the way your family always seemed a bit happier when they slid into the booth, like the day finally settled into something gentle. And even if you didn't realize it then, those moments were shaping your childhood in ways that would only become clear decades later. There was a time not even that long ago when stepping into one of these restaurants felt like stepping into one of the safest, softest corners of Canada. A time when the world felt slower, conversations felt warmer, and a simple meal could become a memory that lasted for the rest of your life. Before we move ahead, I'd love to hear from you. Which old Canadian restaurant do you miss the most, and what memory comes with it? Share it in the comments. I read every story. And if you enjoy these walks through Canada's past, I'd be grateful if you subscribed and tapped the bell so you never miss the next one. If you grew up anywhere near Toronto, Ottawa, or Mississauga in the 90s or early 2000s, you remember walking into Richtree Market Restaurants. It wasn't just eating, it was exploring. You didn't stand in one line and order, you wandered. You watched cooks flipping stir fries, shaping fresh bread, slicing fruit, pulling steaming trays of pastries from ovens. It felt like someone lifted a piece of Europe and gently set it down inside a Canadian mall. And every visit had that same spark of excitement. Here's a moment nearly everyone remembers: standing at the entrance with that little card in your hand, unsure where to go first. Maybe you were leaning over the railing at the Toronto Eaton Centre location, watching the rush below as you debated whether to grab sushi, pasta, schnitzel, or something sweet. Maybe you were with friends after school, laughing as you pointed to different food stations like you were choosing different countries. Maybe you were with family, each person wandering off in a different direction before meeting again at the same table with plates that never matched. It felt global. It felt lively. It felt like the multicultural spirit of Canada in one buzzing room. But sometimes magic comes with a fragile foundation. The rents rose. The costs mounted. Fast casual chains grew more polished and more aggressive. The pace of the world sped up, and Richtree, with all its warmth and wandering and made-to-order meals, slowly slipped out of step with the times. And on March 9th, 2020, the last location quietly closed, the lights dimming not just on a restaurant, but on a whole feeling. If you ever wandered through a Canadian mall in the 80s or 90s, from Metrotown to Polo Park, from Fairview Park to Halifax Shopping Center, you remember the moment you smelled it before you saw it. Muffins didn't just bake muffins, they baked memories. You can probably still picture the way the warm sweetness drifted through the food court, wrapping itself around you like a blanket after walking in from the cold. There's a specific childhood memory almost everyone shares: holding a muffin that felt too big for your hands, peeling the parchment slowly so the crumbs wouldn't spill, even though they always did. Or maybe it's the memory of sitting on a bench near Eaton Center, steam rising from the top of a freshly opened blueberry muffin while your parents sorted shopping bags at your feet. Or standing in line at Scarborough Town Center, watching people ahead of you point excitedly at the muffins behind the glass, each one looking like something baked in a cozy kitchen, not in the middle of a busy mall. But as malls transformed and international chains took over, the MMMmuffin signs vanished, one after another. The oven doors closed, the aroma faded, and with it, a tiny but meaningful piece of daily Canadian life slipped quietly into the past. Even now, just hearing the name is enough to bring back an entire scene: the smell, the warmth, the sweetness, the feeling of a slower, simpler moment in time. And then there was Mother's Pizza, the place where a regular Tuesday evening could feel like a celebration. You remember walking in and being greeted by that soft amber glow of Tiffany lamps hanging over every booth. You remember the faint clink of dishes, the laughter from nearby tables, the warm welcome from staff who always made you feel like you belonged there. If you were a kid, you probably remember leaning your elbows on the table, waiting for your giant frosty mug of root beer, fingers slipping on the cold glass as you tried to take the first sip. Families didn't go out to eat at Mother's. They gathered. They connected. They celebrated birthdays, hockey victories, report cards, anniversaries, and sometimes nothing at all. The sparkler-topped desserts, the bottomless breadsticks, the steaming plates of lasagna, the whole place felt like its own little world, built from the softest parts of nostalgia. You didn't just remember the food, you remembered the feeling of sitting with your family while winter pressed against the windows, and the whole restaurant glowed like a memory you could live inside. Places like that don't disappear quietly. They linger in the mind long after the signs come down. Because what people miss about Mother's isn't just the pizza, it's the moment in life when everything felt warm, safe, and full of possibility. There's a moment in every Canadian childhood when certain memories stop being places you went and start becoming places you felt. Maybe you remember the way the winter air rushed in behind you as the restaurant door opened. Maybe you remember your gloves stuffed into your jacket pockets, your cheeks still rosy from the cold. Or maybe you remember sitting in the back seat, forehead against the window, watching the signs of your favorite places glow through the snowy blur. Those weren't just restaurants, they were markers of a Canada that felt steady, warm, and familiar. And the next place on that map holds a special place in so many hearts. If you ever lived in southern Ontario in the 80s or 90s, Mississauga, Hamilton, Scarborough, Kitchener, you knew exactly what it meant when someone said they were going to Lick's Burgers. No other restaurant had that same feeling of walking into something alive. The moment you stepped inside, the world outside, whether it was rain in Burlington or a snowstorm in Stony Creek, disappeared. The colors were loud, the counters gleamed, and the staff had a spark like they were having more fun than anyone else in the building. People didn't just work at Lick's, they performed. You'd walk in, stomping slush from your boots, and suddenly someone behind the grill burst into a pop song, flipping a burger like it was part of the choreography. Teenagers laughed as they harmonized over milkshake blenders. Kids stood frozen with wide eyes, trying to figure out if the singing was real. Parents raised an eyebrow, then smiled, because where else could you get dinner and a show for the price of a home burger? And the food, the real hearty, stacked high food, anchored the whole thing. You could smell the grilled onions before you reached the counter. You could hear the sizzle long before you ordered. You could feel the warmth of the bun through its wrapper while walking back to your seat. For many people, especially in suburban Ontario, going to Lick's after a Saturday of running errands or a late-night drive with friends felt like a small tradition, a ritual. One of those moments that quietly planted itself in the foundation of your memory. But even the liveliest places aren't immune to the world changing. As bigger chains tightened their branding, launched drive-thrus, and expanded into every city block, the personality-driven charm of Lick's grew harder to sustain. Rents climbed, operations got complicated, the singing softened, the lights dimmed, and suddenly what once felt larger than life became something you remembered more than you experienced. But ask anyone today, especially in the GTA or Golden Horseshoe, and they'll tell you, Lick's wasn't just a burger joint. It was a feeling. It was youth. It was personality at a time when dining still had soul. And if personality made Lick's unforgettable, then Bonanza Steakhouse made itself unforgettable through something even more powerful: togetherness. Across small towns and mid-sized cities, Sudbury, Regina, Red Deer, Moncton, Bonanza wasn't just a restaurant. It was the place families went when they wanted something special but familiar, comforting but memorable. There was nothing quite like walking in from cold prairie wind or Atlantic rain and being greeted by the warm smell of grilled steak mixed with the soft sweetness of pudding cups stacked neatly in their own section. Every Canadian kid has their own version of a Bonanza story. Maybe you remember grabbing your orange tray and actually racing toward the salad bar before your parents even caught up. Maybe you remember stacking bread rolls higher than physics allowed. Maybe you remember sitting in a booth with your hockey team, jerseys still damp from the game, everyone fighting over who got the best seat before the coach finally settled it. Or maybe you remember going with your grandparents, listening to them talk about the week while you poked at your Jell-O cubes, pretending not to notice they were watching you with that quiet joy only grandparents have. The beauty of Bonanza wasn't extravagance. It was abundance mixed with affordability, warmth mixed with routine. In a time when eating out was still a proper event, Bonanza gave families the chance to feel fancy without worrying about the bill. The steak, the salad bar, the trays, the clatter, the laughter, it all blended into one of the most distinctive dining atmospheres Canada ever had. Losing it didn't just mean losing a restaurant. It meant losing a weekly ritual for thousands of families from British Columbia to New Brunswick. As the 2000s approached, though, time shifted. Dining trends moved toward faster, flashier, more global options. Buffets struggled, costs rose, and slowly the lights at Bonanza locations across Canada dimmed, one by one. When the final location closed in 2010, it felt like the end of something bigger, the end of communal, easygoing dining that encouraged people to slow down, talk, and simply be together. And just when you think nostalgia can't get any stronger than that, another memory drifts back, one wrapped in the warm aroma of fresh bread that so many Canadians can still smell in their minds today. Whether you lived in Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, or anywhere in between during the 80s and early 90s, you probably walked through the doors of Bun Master Bakery more than once. Some people remember it as the place they grabbed lunch between classes at university. Others remember it as the spot where office workers lined up for hot soup on cold days. And many remember it as the bakery cafe where families stopped on a quiet Sunday afternoon to bring home a loaf still warm enough to fog up the plastic bag. Every visit carried a sense of comfort. No flashy ads, no loud screens, just the soft sound of a bell above the door, the warmth of ovens working steadily in the back, and the pure, unmistakable smell of fresh bread, the kind that seemed to settle right into your chest when you breathed it in. Some Canadians remember sitting near the window with a book, steam rising from a bowl of chicken noodle soup. Others remember the simple joy of a turkey sandwich that tasted like something a parent would have packed for lunch, not something bought from a chain. But as Canada grew busier, faster, more brand-driven, Bun Master's quiet charm began to fade into the background. The world sped up. Bun Master stayed the same, warm, steady, unpretentious. And slowly, the signs disappeared. Another everyday ritual slipped away, leaving behind a kind of memory that doesn't shout but stays. You can feel it, can't you? How these places weren't just restaurants, they were moments of your life. What's beautiful about these memories is how quietly they stay with you. Years pass, cities change, old malls get renovated, favorite corners of your hometown look nothing like they used to, and yet a single smell, a familiar word, even the color of an old sign can pull you right back. That's the thing about growing up in Canada during those decades. So much of life wasn't fast or polished or crowded with noise. It was built from small, steady rituals that slipped into your heart without announcing themselves. Maybe you remember walking into these restaurants with a coat dusted in snow. Maybe you remember hopping out of your dad's truck, boots crunching on the icy ground, heading toward a glowing doorway that promised warmth. Maybe you remember finishing a long shift, grabbing a late meal with friends, and realizing years later that those simple evenings became the memories you returned to most. These places weren't grand or luxurious. They were familiar. They were constant. They gave us a sense of belonging at an age when we didn't even know we needed it. Across the country from Windsor to Whitehorse, these restaurants became tiny anchors in our lives. Richtree Market Restaurants wasn't just about choosing food from different stations. It was about feeling like the world had opened a little wider. Muffins wasn't just about oversized muffins. It was about the comforting sweetness drifting through every mall on a chilly weekend. Mother's Pizza wasn't just spaghetti and root beer. It was laughter echoing through warm booths on winter evenings. And then there were the ones that tapped into something even deeper. Lick's Burgers wasn't just a place to eat. It was energy, personality, the fun of hearing a teenager sing while flipping a burger. Bonanza Steakhouse wasn't just an all-you-can-eat setup. It was families gathering after hockey games, grandparents treating the kids, trays stacked high with the kind of food that tasted better simply because you were together. Bun Master Bakery wasn't just sandwiches and soup. It was that warm loaf wrapped in paper, resting on your lap during the drive home, fogging up the car windows with the smell of fresh bread. Each of these places carried a different feeling, a different season of your life, a different chapter in the story of growing up here. And when you look back now, it's easy to see something that wasn't obvious at the time. These restaurants didn't just serve meals, they created moments that taught us what home feels like. Canadians have always known how to find comfort in the simplest things. A warm booth after a cold day, a cup of coffee shared without rush, a place where you didn't need to dress up or impress anyone, a space where families could slow down, even if only for an hour. That's the quiet wisdom of this country, that joy often hides in ordinary places. In a bakery with foggy windows, in a mall food court that smelled like muffins, in a dimly lit booth where the world felt soft and safe. Canada's heart has always been built from small, steady gestures of togetherness. Maybe that's why, when we lose places like these, it hits deeper than we expect. We're not just losing food, we're losing a rhythm of life. But here's the beautiful thing about memories. They don't fade just because the buildings do. The emotions stay, the warmth stays, the little flashes of childhood stay. You can still picture the neon signs glowing against winter darkness. You can still hear the soft echo of trays at Bonanza. You can still feel the warmth of bread in a paper bag from Bun Master on your lap during the drive home. These moments didn't vanish, they just moved inside you. And when you think about it, maybe that's why nostalgia feels so powerful for Canadians. We grew up in a country where winter lasted half the year, where families relied on warmth wherever they could find it, in homes, in laughter, in simple meals, in places that felt welcoming no matter what was happening outside. These restaurants gave us more than food. They gave us warmth in a cold country. They gave us familiarity in a changing world. They gave us small, steady joys in a time when life moved slower and felt more human. Close your eyes for a moment and you can almost see it. Your family walking into one of those old restaurants, winter coats unbuttoning, everyone shaking off the cold as the door closes behind you. You can almost hear the soft chatter, the clinking dishes, the gentle hum of people settling into their evening. You can almost feel the booth cushion bending beneath you, smell the first wave of food drifting from the kitchen. See your reflection in the window as snowflakes fall outside. These aren't just memories, they're pieces of who you are. And maybe deep down, that's why remembering these places feels comforting. Not because we want to live in the past, but because the past reminds us of what mattered. Time together, warmth, simplicity, and the gentle presence of family. These restaurants may not exist anymore, but the moments they gave us, those flashes of childhood, of youth, of connection, still glow quietly inside, like a lamp that never fully goes out. If this journey brought back even one warm memory from your childhood, I'd love to hear it. Which restaurant from your past would you bring back if you could, and what memory comes with it? Share it in the comments. Your stories mean more than you know. And if this trip through Canada's past made you smile, feel free to like the video, share it with someone who grew up here too, and subscribe for more stories that keep the heart of old Canada alive.